My son called me and said, "Your beach house and car are sold. We're leaving tomorrow." I calmly replied, "That's fine, but you forgot something." He paused and asked, "What do you mean?" I burst out laughing because the house they sold was actually. This isn't just a story about selling a house. It's about claiming my life back. It's about the day I discovered how far my own son would go to control me, and how that push finally ignited a fire I didn't know I still had. It was a Monday morning, gray and damp, but I was out on the porch anyway, cradling my coffee, watching the leaves dance in the wind across the yard. This house. Owen and I had built a life here for 37 years. Now, it just felt cavernous, echoing with absence. Then the phone rang, shattering the quiet. It was Lionel, my son. He rarely called for a casual chat. There was always a purpose, some new rational suggestion, to improve my life. "Good morning, Lionel," I chirped, trying to inject some false cheer into my voice. The last thing I needed was him commenting on me sounding depressed or weak. "Mom, are you up yet?" His usual impatience crackled through the line. "I want to stop by your place this afternoon. There are some things we need to discuss." My heart sank. "What matters, dear?" I asked, already bracing myself for an unpleasant conversation. "Just financial matters. Nothing urgent." But his tone screamed the opposite. "I'll be at your place around 2. He hung up before I could even reply. I sighed, taking a bitter sip of cold coffee. At 67, I felt perfectly healthy, perfectly sane. But Lionel, my recently turned 42-year-old son, seemed to disagree. Ever since Owen passed 5 years ago, he'd started treating me differently. At first, it was subtle, speaking louder, slower, as if I'd suddenly gone deaf or forgotten English. Then came the explanations for the simplest things: how to use an ATM, how to fill out a check, how to set an alarm. Things I'd done perfectly well for the last 50 years. I pushed myself up and went inside. I needed to clean. Immaculate, I thought, so he couldn't find another reason to worry about my condition. My house had always been my sanctuary, my pride. A 2-story, 4-bedroom home with a garden I tended personally. Owen and I bought it when Iris and Lionel were just 5 and 7. So many memories lived within these walls. But each year after Owen left, it did feel emptier, quieter. As I made the bed, my gaze fell on our anniversary photo. Owen, his eyes full of that same tenderness as the day we met. "Rose, you are the strongest woman I know," he used to tell me. What would he say now, seeing how his son treated me? Precisely at 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. Lionel was nothing if not punctual. I opened it to find him standing with Veronica, my sister-in-law. An odd pair. He, tall and thin, with a perpetually preoccupied frown. She, petite, blonde, with a sharp stare and lips that rarely genuinely smiled. "Mom," Lionel said, giving me a quick, almost clinical hug, then pulling back to appraise me. "You look good. Veronica baked you a blueberry pie." Veronica handed me a perfectly pristine container. "No sugar," she added, as if doing me a great favor. "We're watching your health." I thanked her, inviting them into the living room. As Veronica settled in, Lionel began to pace, scrutinizing every corner of my home. "Mom, how long ago did you call the plumber?" he asked, pointing at the ceiling. "There's a stain in the hallway. Looks like a leak." "There's no leak, Lionel," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "It's a shadow from the tree outside. It's always been there." He frowned. "Are you sure? I can get my man to check it out. You know, little problems can turn into big expenses." I just nodded, knowing argument was futile. For the past year, he'd constantly found things wrong with the house. An electrician, a carpenter, a gardener, all of whom assured me there was nothing amiss. Finally, we sat down. Lionel pulled a folder from his briefcase. "Mom, I want to talk about your finances." He used the same condescending tone he used with his 10-year-old daughter. "I checked your bank statements for the last 3 months, and I'm concerned about some of the transactions." My body stiffened. I had never given him access to my accounts. "How did you get my statements, Lionel?" He faltered for a moment. "That's not important. What is important is that you're spending too much on things you don't need." "Like what?" I asked, anger simmering. "Why did you send $500 to that online store last month?" "It was a gift for Faye," I snapped. A bicycle for my granddaughter's birthday. Mom, $500 is too much for a baby gift. Besides, Faye already has a bicycle. It's a gift for my granddaughter, from Iris, Lionel. And no, she didn't have a bike. The one you and Veronica gave her last Christmas was a tricycle. She's 6 now, she's outgrown it. Lionel and Veronica exchanged a knowing glance, the unspoken message clear. Poor old Rose, confused about the facts. Anyway, Lionel continued, ignoring my correction. I think you need help managing your finances. Since Dad died, your spending has become less predictable. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely steady. Well, like that cruise you booked last year. $700 for a week on a ship. That's just reckless. I took a deep breath. That cruise was a gift from me to Iris and her family. We had a wonderful time. And besides, it was my money that your father and I earned. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Mother. He lowered his voice, as if I were a particularly slow child. You can't just throw money around. Who knows how many years you have left to live? You've got to think about the future. What future, Lionel? I asked, each word stabbing me. The one where I sit in my house, afraid to spend a dime without your permission? Veronica coughed delicately. Rose, dear, we're just worried about you, she simpered, her voice dripping with fake concern. Lionel and I often talk about how hard it must be for you to be alone in this big house. Maybe you should think of something more appropriate for your age. I stared at them, the pieces clicking into place. Their true intentions laid bare. They wanted me to sell the house. My house. The most valuable asset in my portfolio, as Lionel liked to call it. I'm doing just fine in this house, I said, my voice firm. And I don't plan to sell it. No one's talking about selling right now, Lionel said quickly, though his darting eyes betrayed him. But you should start thinking about it. The real estate market is booming. What about the beach house? Veronica interjected. Have you been there once in the last 2 years? The beach house was Owen's and my sanctuary, but just before he died. We planned to spend our retirement there. Fate had other plans. I rarely went after he left. Too many memories. No, but that doesn't mean I want to sell it, I replied, a small lie. Lately, I had been thinking about selling the cabin, but not for Lionel's rational reasons. Mom, the cabin is just sitting idle, losing value. You pay taxes, insurance, utilities. It's all money down the drain. I'll think about it, I said, the only way to end the barrage. Lionel nodded, seemingly satisfied. There's something else. He pulled another document from the folder. I spoke to our family lawyer, Mr. Burton. He thinks you should get a power of attorney in case if you need help making important decisions. My blood ran cold. Power of attorney? For you, I assume. It's just a precaution, Mother. Lionel forced a smile, utterly unconvincing. You're not getting any younger, and sometimes there are situations where you have to act quickly, like selling a house or a beach house. I couldn't hide my sarcasm. Not necessarily, Veronica interjected smoothly. But you have to admit, Rose, it would be easier if Lionel could help you with paperwork and banking and such. I looked at them both, my son and his wife, wondering when everything had gone so terribly wrong. When had my smart, caring boy turned into this controlling man who saw his mother as nothing but a burden and a potential inheritance? After Owen died, I was lost. We had been together for 43 years. He was gone so quickly. In those first months, Lionel had been a true support, handling funeral arrangements, paperwork, Owen's belongings. I was grateful. But then it changed. He started taking an increasing interest in my finances. Innocent questions at first, then advice, now bank statements and power of attorney. I don't think I need a power of attorney, Lionel, I stated firmly. I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. Mom, it's just insurance, he insisted. No one's saying you can't make decisions, but what if you get sick? What if something happens? Then I'll contact you, I replied. Or Iris. Lionel's face tensed at the mention of my daughter. He'd never hidden his disdain for Iris's life choices, her humble life as a botanical garden gardener, not the corporate career he deemed worthy. Iris, he snorted. Mom, she's barely managing her finances. How can she help you? Iris is doing fine with her life. I felt a wave of anger rising. She's happy. Can you say the same? Lionel looked as if I'd slapped him. Veronica put a hand on his shoulder. We're not here to discuss Iris, she said coldly. We're talking about your well-being, Rose. No, I stood up. You're talking about my money. And I think we should end this conversation. Lionel stood too, his face flushed. Mom, you're being irrational. I'm trying to help you. I didn't ask for help, Lionel, I said quietly. And I certainly didn't give you permission to check my bank statements. How did you get access to them in the first place? He faltered, mumbled something about Mr. Burton helping him. Mr. Burton had no right to give you information about my accounts without my consent. I felt my resolve harden. I'll call him tomorrow. There's no need to bother him, Lionel said quickly. I was just trying to make sure you were okay. You so rarely share the details of your life with me. Because it's my life, Lionel, I met his gaze, and I'm going to live it as I see fit. The rest of their visit passed in a suffocating tension. Veronica feigned enjoyment of her tea. Lionel flipped through a magazine, pretending not to seethe. Half an hour later, they left, leaving an untouched blueberry pie and a promise to continue this conversation later. The door closed, and I leaned against it, taking a deep, shaky breath. My heart pounded like I'd just run a marathon. I wasn't used to confronting Lionel. Usually, I just nodded, agreed, avoided conflict. But something was different today. Maybe it was the attempt at a power of attorney, or his condescending comments about Iris, or just the cumulative effect of years of his controlling behavior. I walked to the mantelpiece and picked up a photo, Owen and me, the day we bought this house. So young, so full of hope. What would you do, Owen? I whispered, tracing his smiling face. I already knew the answer. Owen always encouraged my strength. You're not just my wife, Rose, he'd often said. You're a separate person with your own dreams and desires. Don't ever let anyone, not even me, tell you how to live your life. The next morning, I woke with an unexpected lightness. The unpleasant conversation had awakened a long-forgotten resolve. Over coffee, looking through my planner, I saw an entry for an upcoming visit to Iris. My mood instantly lifted. My daughter was Lionel's complete opposite. Where he was calculating and ambitious, she was spontaneous and enthusiastic. Where he sought material success, she sought harmony and joy in simple things. Though I loved both my children, lately it was Iris who brought me true warmth. I packed quickly, deciding to go earlier than planned. A boost of positive energy was exactly what I needed. The botanical garden where Iris worked was a short drive. As I parked and entered, the familiar scent of flowering plants and moist earth enveloped me. I knew I'd find her in the rose garden, her favorite section. And there she was, bent over a bush, carefully trimming wilted buds. In her wide-brimmed straw hat, gardening gloves, and simple linen dress, Iris looked so natural, so peaceful. Her blonde hair, tied back in a ponytail, gleamed in the sunlight. Mom, she exclaimed, seeing me. You're early. She took off her gloves, stood, and hugged me. She smelled of earth, roses, and something fresh I always associated with youth. Thought I'd catch you at work, I smiled. Do you mind? Of course not. Just finishing this section. Wait a minute, and we can go for tea. I sat on a nearby bench, watching her deft, confident movements. Her hands full of love and years of experience. It was hard to believe Lionel had once scoffed. How can you spend 4 years in college only to end up digging in the dirt? I couldn't find words then. Now, watching her, I saw how right she was to follow her vocation. Minutes later, she finished, packed her tools, and came to me. Come on, Mom. Fresh blueberry pastries in the cafeteria today. We walked to the small cafeteria. Iris was truly herself here. Staff greeted her by name. Visitors asked her questions about plants. As we settled with herbal tea and muffins, Iris looked at me keenly. Is something wrong, Mom? You look like you've decided something. I'd always marveled at her ability to read me. Lionel only saw what he wanted. Iris saw what lurked beneath. Lionel came by yesterday, I sighed, with Veronica. Oh. Iris frowned slightly. What did they want this time? I recounted the whole conversation, the bank statements, the power of attorney, the persistent suggestions to sell the house and the beach house. Iris's face grew more serious with each word. "This is out of line, Mom," she said when I finished. "He has no right to interfere in your life like this." "I know," I admitted. And yesterday was the first time I really let him know it. Iris raised her eyebrows in surprise. "You did? What did you say?" "That it's my life, and I'll live it as I see fit." A surge of pride swelled in me. Iris squeezed my palm. "I'm proud of you, Mother. I know how hard it is for you to stand up to Lionel. He's always had a way of pushing people around." After tea, Iris suggested we walk to the greenhouse to see her new orchid collection. We discussed everyday life, her work, my classes, the latest news. "How are Brad and Faye?" I asked as we entered the warm, humid greenhouse. Iris's face brightened at the mention of her husband and daughter. "Great. Brad's on a huge project right now, electrifying a new industrial complex. He's in charge of the whole electrical system. You know, he got all these special permits last year, and now he's literally the specialist everyone wants," she said with genuine pride. "And Faye? She won the school science competition last week. Just like me, she loves plants." I smiled, picturing my granddaughter studying leaves. "I need to come visit you all," I said. "I haven't seen Faye and Brad in a while." Actually, Iris stopped before a display of purple orchids, looking at me, not the flowers. "I wanted to invite you for dinner tonight. We have some news we'd like to share." There was an excitement in her voice that intrigued me. "Of course, I'd love to come. Something good, I hope." "Very," Iris smiled mysteriously. "But the rest is for dinner. Be there at 6. Brad will be making his signature lasagna." After the greenhouse, she showed me the new Japanese rock garden she'd been working on. We spent another hour walking the grounds before I headed home to get ready. At 6 p.m. sharp, I parked in front of Iris and Brad's modern Brooklyn Heights apartment complex. It was impressive, tall towers of glass and concrete, surrounded by manicured green spaces. Iris, who chose the unprofitable profession of a gardener, living in one of the city's most prestigious neighborhoods. I was still getting used to that. Faye met me at the door, flying out as soon as she saw my car. "Grandma," she rushed into my arms. "Come quickly. Daddy's making lasagna, and I helped with the salad." I hugged her, marveling at how fast she was growing. At 6, Faye was a carbon copy of Iris at that age. Same lively brown eyes, same blonde hair, same boundless energy. We took the elevator to the 10th floor. The moment the door opened, the scent of Italian spices and fresh-baked bread enveloped me. Brad emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. Tall, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped blonde hair and kind eyes, he always reminded me of Owen's younger brother. "Rose," he hugged me warmly. "Good to see you. How was your trip?" "Fine, thank you, Brad. It smells delicious." "I hope it tastes good," he grinned. "Faye, show Grandma your new drawings while I finish dinner." Faye pulled me into the living room, where a gallery of her drawings covered the coffee table. While she enthusiastically explained each sheet, I looked around. A spacious, bright 2-bedroom apartment with panoramic windows overlooking the city park. Modern furniture, minimalist design, yet full of personal touches, family photos, books, travel souvenirs, children's crafts, live plants everywhere. It radiated an atmosphere of love and comfort that Lionel and Veronica's perfectly furnished, but cold, home sorely lacked. Iris soon joined us, changed into a simple house dress. "Faye, go wash your hands before dinner," she said, then turned to me. "Thanks for coming, Mom. Brad and I can't wait to tell you our news." Dinner was magnificent. Brad's lasagna truly deserved all the praise. The conversation flowed easily. Faye talked about school, Brad joked about his colleagues, Iris shared stories from the garden. I watched them, deeply grateful for this part of my family. Sincere, loving, real. After dinner, Faye begged her father for a board game, leaving Iris and me to clear the table. "So," I said, helping her load the dishwasher. "What's your news?" Iris practically glowed. "Remember I told you that a great apartment became available in our complex? It's on the 9th floor, right below us. 1 bedroom, studio kitchen, a terrace with a park view. She paused, then, with obvious excitement, added, Brad and I were thinking, maybe you'd like to move there? To be closer to us, to Faye. I stared at her, surprised. Move here? Yes. Iris took my hands. Mom, it's a brand new complex with everything you need. Stores, cafes, a fitness center, even a small clinic and pharmacy. And a park right outside. And we'll be right next door, just one floor up. I was so stunned, I didn't answer immediately. But Iris, it's very expensive, and I have a house. A house that's too big for you alone, she said softly. And one that requires constant upkeep. Think how nice it would be to have no worries about a leaky roof or clogged pipes. Everything new, modern, comfortable. Brad, noticing our serious conversation, left Faye with the game and came over. Had Iris told you about our idea yet? He asked with a smile. Rose, this really is a great place. I've seen this apartment. It's not as big as ours, but it's very cozy and thoughtfully designed. A real gem. But how can I afford an apartment like that? I asked. Even if I sell my house, the house and the beach house together are worth a lot more than this apartment. Brad explained, you could buy it without a mortgage and still have money left over. I thought about it. I'd resisted selling the house before, especially when Lionel had suggested it. But now, with the offer coming from Iris and Brad, and it wasn't just about selling, but starting a new chapter with the part of my family that genuinely appreciated me, it sounded incredibly tempting. Let me show you. Iris pulled a glossy brochure from a drawer, spreading it out. Pages showed bright, modern apartments with panoramic windows, stylish furniture, beautiful views. Then she showed me a plan of the complex. A park, a pond, bike paths, cafes, stores, all the amenities. And here is our apartment, she pointed. And here's the one on the 9th floor we're talking about. I studied the booklet. With each page, the idea grew more attractive. Living in a modern apartment, free from the worries of maintaining a big, old house. Being close to Iris, Brad, and Faye. Having access to all the complex's infrastructure. And most importantly, disposing of my property as I chose, not at Lionel's behest. That's very tempting, I admitted, but I need time to think about it. It's a big decision. Of course, Mother, Iris hugged me. We just wanted you to know about the possibility. Brad and I have been thinking about it ever since we saw the ad for that apartment. Imagine how great it would be. Faye could come over after school. We could have dinner together, go to the park, and no Lionel telling you what to do and how to do it. Brad added with a slight chuckle. Faye wrinkled her nose when she heard her uncle's name. Uncle Lionel is always so serious, she said with childlike candor. And Aunt Veronica never really smiles. Faye. Iris tried to look stern, but I could see her stifling a laugh. Don't talk about relatives like that. But it's true. Faye insisted. Grandma, if you live near us, we can see each other every day. Looking at my granddaughter's enthusiastic face, something warm blossomed in my chest. Maybe this really is what I need, a new beginning next to people who truly loved me, not for what I could give them, but just for who I was. I'll seriously consider your offer, I said. And it was true. And I'll call a realtor tomorrow to see what my house and beach house might be worth. Iris glowed, and Brad nodded approvingly. The rest of the evening passed in a warm family atmosphere. Faye and I played chess. I let her win. Brad showed pictures of his new project, and Iris shared her plans for a small patio garden. When it was time to leave, I felt a lightness, a peace of mind I hadn't had in a long time. On the way home, I couldn't stop thinking about Iris's proposal. The Brooklyn Heights complex truly was impressive. Modern, comfortable, with excellent infrastructure. To live close to my daughter and granddaughter, to see them every day, to be a part of their lives. The thought filled me with joy. And yet, the decision to sell the house where I'd spent most of my life with Owen was not an easy one. So many memories, so many stories. But maybe it was time to move on, to start a new chapter, leaving the past behind. Keeping only the memories in my heart. The next morning, I called Hugo Prescott, the realtor Owen and I had worked with when we bought the beach house. Hugo was known for his attention to detail and honesty, qualities I valued, especially in financial matters. Rose, What a nice surprise. His voice was warm. What can I do for you? Hugo, I'm thinking of selling the beach house and maybe the main house, too, I said, surprised at my own determination. Could we meet to discuss the details? Sure, he agreed immediately. I can stop by this afternoon if it's convenient. We arranged to meet at 2 o'clock, and I spent the morning gathering paperwork for both houses and the car. The thought of saying goodbye brought mixed feelings. But every time doubt crept in, I remembered Faye's face, talking about seeing each other every day, and my resolve returned. At exactly 2 o'clock, Hugo's car pulled up. Punctuality was another of his strong points. I made tea and cookies, and we settled in the living room. So, Rose, tell me more about your plans. Hugo pulled out a notebook. I told him about Iris's offer, the apartment in Brooklyn Heights, my desire for a new chapter. Brooklyn Heights is an excellent choice, Hugo nodded. One of the most prestigious new developments. Top-notch construction, excellent infrastructure. What do you think of my idea to sell both houses and my car? I asked. Would I get enough to buy an apartment there? Hugo tapped his pen thoughtfully. Let's do the math. The real estate market is booming, especially for a property like your beach house, close to the water, good condition. Very valuable. Your main house is in a great neighborhood, too. And despite its age, it's well maintained. As for the car, how old is it? 5, I answered. But the mileage is low, and I rarely drove long distances. Hugo made some notes, then looked up and smiled. Rose, I'm pretty sure the proceeds from the sale will more than cover the cost of the Brooklyn Heights apartment. Even with all the taxes and fees, you'll have a decent amount left over. Something inside me relaxed. It was one thing to dream, another to know it was financially possible. Okay, I nodded. Where do we start? I suggest we start with the beach house, Hugo said. It would be easier to sell and give us an idea of how the main house would go. Can I go and see it in the next few days? Sure. I haven't been there in a while. I felt a pang of guilt. Owen had loved the cabin so much, and I'd almost abandoned it. Maybe it could use a little work. Don't worry about it, Hugo assured me. I know some great contractors who can fix it up in no time. He also recommended a reliable used car dealer. We agreed to visit the beach house the next day, and Hugo left, leaving me feeling like I'd just taken the first step toward a new life. The beach house tour went better than I expected. Even though I hadn't visited in over a year, the local staff Owen and I hired when we bought it had done a good job. The cottage was clean, well-maintained, needing only minimal cosmetic repairs. Hugo took photos, measured rooms, wrote a detailed description. Rose, I think we can put it on the market next week, he said as we drove back to town. With any luck, we'll find a buyer pretty quickly. Properties like this are going fast. And so it was. Within 10 days of the house appearing on real estate websites, we had 3 potential buyers. The young couple who made the best offer, Elizabeth and Nathan, fell in love with it at first sight. It's exactly what we were looking for, Elizabeth said, looking out over the ocean view terrace. A place to escape the hustle and bustle. Watching them make plans, I felt a strange sense of relief. This cabin deserved laughter again, to be filled with life and love. Owen would be pleased. The beach house deal went smoothly and quickly. Elizabeth and Nathan paid even more than we'd asked for. They liked it so much. My car also sold for a good price. Hugo was right. The low mileage and excellent condition made a difference. The main house was a little more complicated. Despite its prestigious neighborhood and spaciousness, its age and style limited the range of potential buyers. Hugo suggested some renovations to freshen up the interior. Modern buyers like bright, open spaces, he explained. A few halogen lights, fresh light-colored paint, maybe some wallpaper, and the house will look completely different. I agreed. The thought of changing anything in a house that had remained unchanged for so many years made me uneasy, but Hugo was right. After 2 weeks of work, the house looked fresher, more modern, while retaining its character and charm. All this time, I hadn't told Lionel about my plans. Part of me wanted to call him, to explain what I was doing and why. But the other part, the part still smarting from his attempts to control my life, preferred to keep it a secret until the last moment. After all, I didn't have to answer to him for my decisions. Iris, on the other hand, was in the loop every step of the way. She helped me sort through my belongings, deciding what to take, what to give away, sell, or throw away. It was a strangely liberating process, sifting through decades of accumulated items, leaving only what truly mattered. "Are you sure you want to get rid of this stuff?" Iris would ask, every time I put aside something she thought might have sentimental value. "I take my memories with me, dear," I answered. "And things are just things." There were exceptions, of course. Photographs, Owen's letters, a few special pieces of furniture for the new apartment. But most of what filled my home was stuff I was ready to leave behind. Finally, almost 2 months after my first conversation with Hugo, a buyer emerged for the main house, a married couple with 2 teenage children, looking for a spacious home in a good neighborhood. They made an offer slightly below the asking price, but after a little negotiation, we agreed. "Congratulations, Rose," Hugo said as we signed the final papers. "You've just successfully sold all your real estate, and at a very good price." I felt a strange mixture of emotions, relief, excitement, a slight sadness, and above all, a profound sense of freedom. For the first time in years, I was completely free from the obligations of homeownership. It was frightening and exhilarating all at once. The next day, Hugo and I went to the Brooklyn Heights sales office to discuss the purchase of the condo Iris had suggested. Iris herself joined us, taking a day off. "Miss Holloway, Mr. Prescott, we are pleased to welcome you." The sales manager, an elegant woman named Vivian, greeted us in her spacious office with panoramic windows overlooking the complex. "I understand you're interested in apartment 92. "Yes," Iris confirmed. "My mother is considering moving to Brooklyn Heights, and this apartment is perfect. It's 1 floor below ours." Vivian smiled. "That's a great choice. This apartment is one of our gems, compact but very functional, with a beautiful view of the park. Would you like to see it now?" We walked through the manicured grounds. Vivian pointed out amenities: pool, fitness center, 24-hour security, underground parking. "Brooklyn Heights is designed to maximize residents' comfort and safety," she explained. "All the services you need are available within the complex, yet we are only minutes away from downtown." We took the elevator to the 9th floor, and Vivian opened the door to apartment 92. I held my breath as I crossed the threshold. The first thing I noticed was the light. Large, floor-to-ceiling windows filled the space with natural light. The apartment was smaller than my old house, but so intelligently planned that it felt spacious and airy. "The main space here is the studio kitchen." Vivian led us into the main room. A fully equipped kitchen with modern appliances, a bar counter that can serve as a dining table and a workplace. The living area is designed so that one can enjoy the view from the window. And indeed, we had a beautiful view of the park: green trees, winding paths, a small pond with a fountain. It was an oasis of nature in the middle of the city. "And here's the bedroom." Vivian opened the door. "It's not the biggest, but it's very cozy. The built-in closet saves space, and the window faces the same side as the living room, so the view of the park is preserved." The bedroom was compact but thoughtful, enough room for a bed, a small dresser, even a window seat. I imagined waking up here, watching the sun rise over the park, and it filled me with peace. "The bathroom," Vivian continued, "shower cubicle, toilet, wash basin, space for a washing machine, all the essentials. Decorated with light-colored tiles, it felt larger. Modern plumbing, a large mirror, built-in storage. Everything was meticulously thought out. And finally, the gem of this apartment, the terrace." Vivian slid open the glass doors. We stepped out onto the small but delightful terrace. There's enough room for a table and a couple of chairs. You could have a mini potted garden or just enjoy the fresh air and the view. I walked to the railing and took a deep breath. From here, the park seemed even closer, the city noise farther away. It was perfect for morning coffee or afternoon tea. "So, what do you think, Mom?" Iris walked over, her eyes shining. "Do you like it?" "It's perfect," I said. And it was true. The apartment was the epitome of everything I was looking for. Compact but not cramped, modern but cozy, with a view that soothed my soul. We returned to the sales office to discuss finances. Hugo, as always, was invaluable. He helped me navigate the intricacies of the deal, ensuring I got the best terms. Given that you are willing to pay full price outright with no mortgage, we can offer you a small discount, Vivian said, looking through the documents. Also, if you decide to buy the furniture package, we'll include it at cost price. I glanced at Hugo, and he gave a faint nod, confirming it was a good offer. When can I move in? I asked, my impatience growing. The apartment is completely ready, Vivian answered. As soon as we complete the formalities, which will take about a week, you can move in. Walking out of the sales office, I felt like I had just taken the most important step of my life, second only to deciding to marry Owen. It was scary and exciting at the same time. You won't regret it, Mom. Iris hugged me. We'll be so close. Faye will be able to come over after school. We'll have dinner together, go to the park. I know, honey. I hugged her back. And I'm not sorry anymore. On the way home, to the house that would soon no longer be mine, I thought about how my life had turned out. Just 2 months ago, I'd been overwhelmed by Lionel's attempts to control me, feeling old and helpless. And now I had sold 2 houses and a car, bought a new apartment, and was getting ready to start a whole new chapter. The money from the sale truly exceeded my expectations. After buying the apartment and setting aside funds for a new, smaller car, I had a substantial amount left over. And I already had plans for that money. I decided to pay off most of Iris and Brad's mortgage. They deserved it. Not only for their kindness and caring, but for pushing me to take this drastic step. But I hadn't said anything to Lionel. Not out of vindictiveness, but simply because it was my decision, my life, and I didn't feel the need to answer to him. That evening, sitting in my nearly empty living room, most of the furniture already sold or given away, I felt a strange lightness. It was as if by shedding things, I was also shedding the weight of the past, of expectations and conventions. In the silence of the empty house, I could finally be honest with myself. I was ready for a change, ready to step into a future of my own choosing. Lionel's call came early the next morning, just as I finished breakfast. For weeks, I had been immersed in preparing for the move. Most belongings boxed, some furniture sold, the rest marked for my new apartment, Iris's, the thrift store, or the dump. Seeing his name on the screen still made me uneasy. We hadn't spoken since that day he'd tried to convince me to sign the power of attorney. He'd called a couple of times, but I hadn't answered, not ready for another argument about my financial security. "Good morning, Lionel," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Mom." He sounded unusually excited. "I finally got through to you. I have great news." "What news?" I asked, my muscles tensing. "I sold your beach house and car." His tone was so smug, I could almost picture him leaning back, smiling in satisfaction. Got a very good price for both. Given the state of the market, it was the perfect time to sell. I was silent, trying to comprehend what I was hearing. Lionel had sold my property. Property I no longer owned. Property I had sold myself 2 months ago. "Are you there, Mom?" he asked when the pause lengthened. "Yes, Lionel, I'm here," I answered slowly. "And I'm trying to figure out how you managed to sell something that doesn't belong to you." "What?" Confusion clouded his voice. "What are you talking about?" "We talked about this. Remember when I said the beach house was just losing value and your car was too big for a single woman your age? We discussed it," I said, feeling a strange calm bloom inside me. "But I didn't give you permission to sell it. And more importantly, I sold both the house and the car 2 months ago." There was a long pause. I could almost hear the gears turning in my son's head, trying to make sense of this information. "What?" he finally squeezed out. "Is this some kind of joke?" "You didn't. How did you even?" "I worked with Hugo Prescott," I explained. "Remember him? He helped me and your dad when we bought the beach house. Very competent realtor." Lionel seemed speechless. "Why? Why didn't you consult me? Why didn't you consult me before you sold my property?" I asked back, my voice calmer than I expected. Another pause. "Mom," Lionel finally said, his tone changing to that condescending one I hated. "I know you're upset, but I was only acting in your best interest. Now tell me seriously, did you really sell the house and the car, or was it just, fantasy?" Anger flared, but I forced myself to remain calm. If you don't believe me, Lionel, call the registry office or the transit authority. They'll confirm that neither the cabin nor the car are registered in my name anymore. Another pause, but this time I could hear Lionel breathing heavily. Mom. His voice became strained. If this is true, we have a serious problem. I've already gotten the money from the buyers, the full amount. Then you do have a problem, I agreed. Because you sold something that didn't belong to you, or me. I need to come over, he said suddenly. We need to discuss this in person. I'll be there in an hour with Veronica. He hung up without waiting for my answer. I slowly put the phone down, feeling a strange mix of emotions, anxiety, anger, but also a perverse satisfaction. For the first time in a long time, Lionel was facing the consequences of his controlling behavior. I called Iris, briefly recounting the conversation. Oh my God, Mom. She couldn't contain her laughter. He really got himself into a mess, didn't he? I'm afraid so, I replied, feeling slightly guilty for finding the situation a little amusing. He's on his way here with Veronica. He'll be here in an hour. Do you want me to come? Iris asked. For moral support? I thought for a moment, then shook my head, though she couldn't see it. No, darling. I think I'm better off handling this on my own. But thank you for the offer. Exactly an hour later, as I finished packing the last of the books, the doorbell rang. Lionel stood on the threshold, pale and tense, with Veronica behind him, her face a mixture of irritation and worry. Come in, I said, stepping aside. They walked into the living room and stopped, looking around at the half-empty room, littered with boxes. What's going on in here? Lionel asked, his voice higher than usual. I'm moving, I answered simply. Have a seat if you can find one. I've already sold most of the furniture. They settled awkwardly on the couch, which I'd left behind because it didn't fit my new apartment. I sat in the chair across from them, hands folded in my lap, waiting. Mom, Lionel began, clearly trying to sound reasonable. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was just trying to help you. The beach house needed maintenance. The car was too big. I found great buyers, got a good price. All for your own good. For my own good? I echoed. Lionel, you sold my property without my knowledge or consent. How can that be for my own good? You're getting older, Mom. He grimaced slightly. It's hard for you to make good financial decisions. I just wanted to save you the stress of the process. Lionel. I leaned forward, looking him straight in the eye. I'm 67 years old. I don't suffer from dementia or any other condition that would affect my ability to make decisions. I am quite capable of managing my finances, as evidenced by the fact that I have successfully sold both the beach house, my car, this house, and bought a new apartment. All without your help. You sold the house? Veronica spoke for the first time, her eyes wide with shock. Yes, I nodded. 3 weeks ago. The new owners move in 2 weeks. Where are you going to move to? Lionel asked, his voice shaking with barely contained anger. Brooklyn Heights. I couldn't help a slight smile as his eyes widened further. A lovely apartment on the 9th floor overlooking the park. The floor below Iris and Brad's apartment. Brooklyn Heights. Veronica seemed genuinely stunned. But it's one of the most expensive new developments in the city. Indeed, I agreed. But selling the 2 houses and the car brought in a good amount of money, more than enough to buy an apartment without a mortgage and some other expenses. Lionel looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. His face shifted from shock to disbelief, then to realization, and finally, to something akin to panic. Mom. His voice became hoarse. Do you realize I already got the money for the beach house and the car? The full amount? The buyers expect me to hand over the paperwork to them in the next few days. Yes, that's a problem, I nodded. A problem you created yourself by selling something that doesn't belong to you. You have to help me, he suddenly exclaimed. This is your fault. My fault. I raised my eyebrows. How can selling my property be my fault? You should have told me. He was almost shouting now. You knew I was in the business of selling. No, I didn't, I replied calmly. You never mentioned it once in our conversations. You asked me if I was thinking of selling, and I said I would think about it. That was all. Lionel. Veronica turned to her husband, her voice icy. You sold the property without the proper paperwork. I had a power of attorney, he defended himself. From our family lawyer, Mr. Burton. You mean a forged power of attorney? I clarified. Because I never signed a power of attorney in your name, Lionel. Never. My son's face turned ash gray. Burton said it was standard procedure, that since you were a widow and I was your eldest son, I had the right to you forged documents? Veronica jumped up, her eyes glittering with rage. Do you realize that's a felony? Lionel. Forgery? Fraud? Selling someone else's property. I didn't forge. Lionel stood too, his face contorting. Burton said it was legal. Then Mr. Burton should refresh his knowledge of the law, I said. Because I'm pretty sure that a power of attorney requires my signature. Lionel paced the room, hands in his hair. What am I going to do now? The money. I've already spent most of it. Spent it. Veronica seemed shocked. On what? On investments, he mumbled. And the car, and the trip I wanted to give you for your anniversary. So, you spent money that wasn't yours on a gift for me? Veronica looked ready to hit him. And now we could both be accomplices to fraud. I didn't know. Lionel raised his voice. How was I supposed to know she'd sell everything behind my back? Behind your back? I couldn't believe my ears. Lionel, it's my property. I don't have to answer to you about what I do with it. You're my mother. He turned to me, his face contorted. Of course, you have to consult me, especially on such important decisions. No, I don't. I remained calm, which seemed to infuriate him more. I'm a capable adult. I make my own decisions. And where did that get you? He threw his hands up. You sold the family home. You bought a condo in this fancy complex that doesn't suit you at all. You're going to live next door to Iris, who don't finish that sentence, Lionel, my voice hardened. Come on, tell me what you think of your sister. He paused, apparently realizing he'd gone too far. I just meant that you're used to a certain way of life, he said, softer. The house, the garden. You'll feel cramped in a small apartment. That's my concern, not yours, I replied. And in case you're wondering, I'm looking forward to moving in. No more worries about a leaky roof or broken plumbing. Everything is new, modern, comfortable. And yes, I'll be close to Iris, Brad, and Faye, who, unlike some, respect my right to make my own decisions. Lionel looked like he wanted to say something, but Veronica beat him to it. Let's get back to the main problem, she said, turning to my son. You took money for property you don't own. You have to give it back now. I told you I spent it. Lionel raised his voice. At least most of it. I don't have that kind of money. Then you'll have to borrow it, Veronica cut him off, because the alternative is prosecution for fraud. Borrow from who? Lionel looked cornered. The bank? With what kind of collateral? We're up to our necks in mortgages. It's not my problem, Veronica crossed her arms. You created this situation. You're the one who has to deal with it. Mom. Lionel turned to me, his tone suddenly pleading. You have to help me. You don't want your son to end up in jail, do you? I stared at him, feeling a strange mixture of pity and disappointment. This grown man, my son, who always thought he knew best, now looked like a frightened child. Lionel, I said softly but firmly. I can't help you. The money from the sale had already been distributed. Some of it to buy an apartment, some to pay off Iris and Brad's mortgage, some for a new car that was more suited to the city. The rest I'm saving for the future. You gave the money to Iris? Lionel looked like he'd been punched. My sister, who works as a gardener and lives beyond her means in a luxury complex. Your sister, who has a loving husband with a good job, a beautiful daughter, and lives by her own values, not other people's expectations, I corrected. And yes, I helped them with their mortgage because I wanted to do it. It's not fair. Lionel was almost shouting. She was always your favorite. This isn't about favoritism, Lionel, I sighed. It's about respect. Iris respects my autonomy, my decisions. She offered me an option, but she left the decision up to me. She wasn't trying to control me or convince me that I wasn't capable of taking care of myself. I just wanted to help. His voice sounded almost pitiful. No. I shook my head. You wanted to control. That's different. Veronica, who'd been silently watching, suddenly turned to Lionel. I can't believe you put us in this position. Her voice was icy. You went behind your mother's back, probably broke the law, and now we could lose everything because of your incompetence. Don't you dare call me incompetent. Lionel turned sharply towards her. I was trying to keep us financially secure. I was thinking about our future. Provide security by deceiving your mother? Veronica sneered. That's a wonderful plan, Lionel. Just perfect. You never support me. Lionel raised his voice. Always criticizing, always finding faults, because you're always making mistakes. Veronica started yelling too. First that bad investment last year. Now this. Do you realize we could lose the house if we have to pay that money back? I watched their argument with growing discomfort. It was an unpleasant sight, two grown people yelling at each other, oblivious to my presence. And yet, there was some poetic justice in it. Lionel, so fond of controlling others, was now completely out of control of the situation. I think you'd better continue this conversation at home, I said, rising from my chair. I still have a lot to do in preparation for the move. They both turned to me as if they'd just been made aware of my presence. Lionel looked confused. Veronica looked angry. Yes, of course. Veronica was the first to regain composure. I apologize for the scene, Rose. We really have to go. She headed for the door without waiting for her husband. Lionel lingered, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite pinpoint, a mixture of anger, resentment, and perhaps fear. Mom, he began, but I shook my head. Not now, Lionel. You need to deal with the problem you created and maybe rethink some things. He stood for another moment, as if wanting to say something, but then just nodded and followed his wife. The door closed behind them, and a blessed silence filled the house. I returned to my chair, taking a deep breath. Strangely, I felt no gloating or satisfaction that Lionel was in this situation, only fatigue and a slight sadness. After all, despite his flaws, he was my son. And it pained me to see how his own actions had led him to such a crisis. But at the same time, I felt strangely relieved. It was as if the last threads binding me to the past, to a life where I let others decide for me, had finally been severed. I was free. Not only from extra stuff in a house that was too big, but also from expectations and control. In 2 weeks, I was moving into my new apartment in Brooklyn Heights. And despite the drama that had just played out in my living room, I was looking forward to this new beginning. Moving day was surprisingly sunny and warm for early fall. The movers had already loaded the last boxes, and I took one final walk around the house I'd lived in for nearly 4 decades. The empty rooms echoed my footsteps, and I felt a strange mixture of nostalgia and relief. Goodbye, I whispered, standing in the doorway of the bedroom where Owen and I had spent so many nights. Thank you for everything. I didn't cry. All the tears had been cried before, in those first months after Owen's death. Now, I was ready to move on, to start a new chapter. When I closed the front door behind me, Iris was already waiting by her car, ready to escort me to my new home. Are you okay, Mom? She asked, hugging me. More than okay, I smiled. Let's go. Brooklyn Heights welcomed us with activity, people strolling in the park, sitting in cafes, exercising on sports fields. The place pulsed with life, and I felt a surge of energy just being there. My apartment on the 9th floor was exactly as I remembered it. Bright, spacious, perfectly laid out. But now that my furniture and personal belongings had been moved in, it was truly mine. The panoramic windows filled the space with light, and the terrace had a wonderful view of the park. What do you think? Iris stood next to me, watching my reaction. It's perfect, I said. And it was the truth. The next few days passed in a flurry of settling and unpacking. Iris, Brad, and even little Faye helped, making the work a family activity. Grandma, look! Faye exclaimed, pulling an old picture of Owen from a box. I found a picture of Grandpa. It'll look good right here on the dresser. That's a great idea, sweetie. I kissed my granddaughter's head, touched by her concern. By the end of the week, the apartment was completely organized, looking as if I had always lived here. It was a strange but pleasant feeling to start fresh in a new place, while maintaining a connection to the past through carefully selected objects and photographs. Life in Brooklyn Heights was even better than I expected. The complex's infrastructure was thoughtfully designed, from the 24-hour concierge to the gym and pool. Within the first month, I discovered yoga for seniors, a book club, and weekly movie nights at the community center. "You look happy, Mom," Iris remarked one evening as we sat on my patio, enjoying tea at sunset. "I do feel happy," I admitted, for the first time in a long time. And it was true. Every morning, I woke with a sense of anticipation. What would the day bring? Who would I meet? What new things would I learn? This energy and curiosity reminded me of my youth, a time before marriage, when the whole world seemed full of possibilities. I quickly became friends with several neighbors, especially Eleanor, a 70-year-old former literature teacher who lived next door. We often went to yoga together, then for coffee, discussing books, movies, and life. "You know, Rose," she once told me, at our age, "starting something new is an act of courage. Most people just cling to the old and familiar, even if it makes them unhappy." Her words made me think of Lionel. After that memorable day when he found out about my move, we hardly spoke. He called a few times, but the conversations were tense and short. I knew from Iris that he was facing serious financial problems, needing to pay back the defrauded buyers. He took out a loan against the house, Iris told me. And he and Veronica seem to be fighting about it all the time. She accuses him of incompetence. He snaps back. It's not a very pleasant situation. I felt regret, but not guilt. Lionel had created this problem by his own actions, by his desire to control my life. And while it pained me to see my son suffer, I realized I couldn't save him from the consequences of his own decisions. My life, meanwhile, was taking on a new rhythm and meaning. I began volunteering at the local library. Twice a week, helping with the children's reading program. It reminded me of when Iris and Lionel were little. I also enrolled in a watercolor painting class, a hobby I'd always dreamed of but never found time for. It was a special joy to spend time with Faye. Now that I lived so close, she would often drop by after school, and we'd spend time together until Iris and Brad came home. We'd bake cookies, play board games, sometimes just sit on the patio watching the birds and squirrels in the park. "Grandma, I'm so glad you live close by now," Faye said one day as we made Thanksgiving cards. "I used to see you only on weekends, but now I see you every day." Her words warmed my heart. I, too, was grateful for this opportunity to be a real part of my granddaughter's life, to see her grow and develop, to participate in her daily joys and anxieties. One day, about 3 months after I moved in, I was returning from morning yoga when Michael, the concierge, stopped me in the lobby. "Mrs. Holloway, you have a visitor," he informed me, with slight awkwardness. "Your son. He's been waiting for about half an hour, but I didn't want to disturb you during class." I was surprised. Lionel had never come to Brooklyn Heights before, much less unannounced. "Thank you, Michael." "Where is he?" "In the lobby bar." The concierge pointed to the glass doors. "I told him I couldn't let him upstairs without your permission, as you requested for all visitors." I nodded, grateful for the strict adherence to security rules. One of the perks of living in Brooklyn Heights. Lionel sat at the bar, sipping coffee and nervously checking his cell phone. He didn't look good, pale, gaunt, with circles under his eyes. When he saw me, he stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his cup. "Mom, finally," he said with relief. "I thought you were avoiding me." "I was at yoga," I explained, sitting at a table away from other customers. "You could have called before you came over." Lionel sat across from me, his gaze roving restlessly over the stylish interior of the lobby bar. "It's a beautiful place," he said finally. "Impressive." "Yeah, I like it here," I nodded. "What brings you here, Lionel?" He hesitated, then blurted out, "Mom, I need your help." I waited for him to continue, though I already knew. "The situation is complicated," he said, avoiding my eyes. "The loan I took out to pay back the buyers, the interest rate was higher than I bargained for. And Veronica, she left me. She filed for divorce." I felt a pang of regret. Despite our differences, Lionel was still my son, and it pained me to see him suffer. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "Yes," he grinned bitterly. "She said she could no longer live with a man who was not only incompetent financially, but also so arrogant that he refused to admit it. He was silent for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Mom, I know you have money left over from selling the houses. I need a loan to refinance the loan. I'll pay it back with interest as soon as I stabilize the situation. I looked at my son for a long time. Sitting in front of me was the man who always thought he knew best how to live my life, how to manage my money, how to make decisions. A man who had tried to control my life under the pretense of caring. And now he was in a situation he couldn't control. Lionel, I said softly but firmly, I can't give you that money. Why not? His face contorted with resentment. You helped Iris with the mortgage. Why can she and I can't? It's not a matter of can or can't, I explained. The point is, you don't need financial help. You need to learn to live within your means, accept the consequences of your decisions, and most importantly, stop trying to control things that don't belong to you. But I could lose the house. He sounded desperate. Maybe, I nodded. And it would be hard. But Lionel, money isn't the solution to your problem. Your problem is much deeper than that, and the only person who can solve it is you. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite define: shock, disbelief, maybe even a glimmer of realization. I am your son, he said at last. Shouldn't you be helping me? I am helping you, I answered. By not letting you escape the consequences of your actions. Sometimes the greatest help is to let a man find his own way out of a situation he's created. Lionel sat in silence, staring into his nearly empty cup. Then he stood up, pulled on his jacket. I understand, he said dryly. I'm sorry to bother you. Lionel, I stood up too. You will always be my son, and I will always love you. But I will no longer indulge your desire to control everything around you, including me. When you're ready for a relationship based on mutual respect, I'll be happy to see you. He nodded without looking at me and headed for the exit. He stopped at the door, as if wanting to say something, but then he just walked out. I went back to my apartment, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and calm. Talking to Lionel was hard, but necessary, and perhaps in the long run, it was the best thing I could do for him, give him a chance to grow up. By facing the consequences of his actions. That evening, Iris, Brad, Faye, and I had dinner together, as we did almost every night. After dinner, when Faye went to her room to do her homework, I told them about Lionel's visit. He's really in a bad situation, Iris sighed. But you did the right thing, Mom. Lionel needs to learn to take responsibility for his actions. I know, I nodded. But that doesn't make the decision any less painful. Brad, who had been silently listening, suddenly got up and left the room. He came back with a bottle of wine and 3 glasses. I think we could all use some, he said with a slight smile as he poured the wine. We sat in cozy silence, sipping the wine and looking at the lights of the city outside the window. It was at times like this that I realized how lucky I was to be with Iris and Brad, with their love and support. By the way, Brad said suddenly, as if remembering something. I've been meaning to tell you for a long time, Rose. Do you remember when Iris and I offered you an apartment in our complex? Sure, I nodded. It was the best offer I'd gotten in a long time. Well, actually, he looked a little embarrassed. I asked a colleague of mine, Neil, to hold the apartment for you. He works in the sales department of Brooklyn Heights. Really? I looked at him in surprise. Yes. Brad nodded. When we heard that the 9th floor apartment was vacant, Iris and I thought of you. And to be honest, he looked at Iris, as if asking permission to continue. She nodded, smiling. If you didn't have enough money from the house sale, we were planning to take out an additional mortgage and buy this apartment for you, Brad finished. We just wanted you to be here for us. I felt a lump rise in my throat and tears filled my eyes. These two, my daughter and her husband, were willing to take on an extra financial burden just so I could be closer to them. Not because they thought I was incapable of taking care of myself, but simply out of love and a desire to be together. I don't know what to say, I mumbled, wiping away my tears. It's the most touching thing anyone has ever done for me. We love you, Mom, Iris said, simply squeezing my hand. And we want you to be a part of our daily lives, not just a weekend visitor. I hugged them both, feeling gratitude and love overwhelm me. In that moment, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I had made the right choice. Not only in moving to Brooklyn Heights, but in the way I had lived my life, raising children who had grown up so differently. Lionel, with all his flaws, was a product of his choices to seek control, to seek material success, to seek power. Iris had chosen a different path, the path of love, of caring, of genuine relationships. And now, sitting in the warm living room, surrounded by the love of my family, I was deeply grateful that I had made my choice. The choice to be with those who truly valued me for who I was. It was dusk outside the window, but there was light in my heart. The light of the new life I had chosen for myself.